Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My guest today is Brian Biro, a friend of mine and a fellow leadership guy, and a guy that has been changing the world for a long time. I have great respect for him. We've done work together when we both lived in Asheville, North Carolina. We did a project called Lessons in Leadership, which we're very proud of, and another guest that I've had on, John Locke, was another part of that. And soon I'll be interviewing Meredith Elliott Powell, who was another part of our team there in Lessons Leadership. So we're getting the band back together, so to speak. Brian, I'm glad you're here, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we'll kind of jump in from there.
Great, Ed, and it's just a joy to be with you. I've always totally admired you, and the depth of your thinking is remarkable. And I always try to keep my perspective correct and my priorities in line. So if you ever receive an email from me, which you've received many over the time, it always starts with who I am. It's Brian Biro, husband, father, grandfather, speaker, author. That's the most important thing in the world to me is my family. And but I love what I do. I've been a professional speaker for 33 years. I've had the joy of speaking almost 1,900 times, about 1 million people all around the world about leadership, team building, thriving on change, mostly about breakthroughs. And I've loved people my whole life. I've had 3 really neat careers. My first career, I was a U.S. swimming coach. So I was working with young athletes to try to rise to their potential. You don't really coach swimming, though. You coach people. It's really about the internal workings, their emotions and their thoughts. That really is where you really coach. The technique part is the easy part. It's the other part that makes the difference. Mm-hmm. I'm probably the only guy you know who went back to school to get an MBA to get a life instead of a job, and I did. And I ended up going into the corporate world. That was my second career. And what I learned from that was that my love for people made me want to really recognize who I am. And I'm a teacher above all. And so for 33 years, it's just been doing what I love with a passion.
And your breakthrough meme or purpose, however you phrase that, I think is very, very important for the time we're living in now. Can you kind of give us an idea? And this might be a way for people to connect to you as a way, oh, I really needed to get to know Brian because of what he's saying here. Not to put any pressure on you. There's no pressure on you, but to say, we've gone through a time of change, and now we need to go through a time of breakthrough. Describe that to us as you see where we are today.
Well, I think that the challenge that people are facing is that there seems to be so much that we think is out of our control. Mm-hmm. And when we focus on the things we don't control, that's when we feel disillusioned, disappointed, in turmoil, feeling helpless or hopeless sometimes. And so my focus on breakthrough is to make breakthroughs not only possible in your life, much more important, plannable. And that starts by recognizing that breakthroughs come from controlling your controllables. You ever notice when you're focusing on the things you do control, how much more optimistic you feel, how much more momentum you feel in your life, how much more you feel like you can versus you can't? So over the years, through those 3 careers, I've sort of crystallized a focus on 3 foundational controllables, and it's really the center of all that I do. The first is about vision. Sometimes we think that some people say, I don't have a vision. Well, you do. You have your own internal GPS. And so the first of the controllables is how to shape your own future. And how do you do that? How do you really begin to take charge of your vision in a way that supports you rather than don't? And I talk about a simple principle. What you focus on is what you create. Are you focusing on what you don't want, or are you focusing on what you do want? To shift that movement is to shift the momentum of your life. That's where breaks start. You got to see it before you can be it. The second of the controllables is to energize and engage your team and yourself. When it comes to human performance, teamwork, joy, health, so much of it is energy. And yet, unless we're a physics major, we've never really studied energy, and that's a different kind of energy.
Right.
How do you really energize and engage the people in your life and yourself? And it starts with yourself. So that's the second controllable. And the third is to build people, build teams, and build relationships. All 83 of the people you've had on your show so far, every single person who's listening, if they work, we're all in the same business at the foundation. We're in the people business. It's the relationships you build, it's how you grow and help others grow that will determine how far you can go. So how do you do that? How do you build trust with people immediately? How do you help people know that they're significant and important, which I believe is what our job is? How do you help create balance in this world? So those three controllables, when you focus on those, and here's the thing, everybody wants results. We want results. We want breakthrough results. But the way to get there is to focus on what you put in, and then they will come out. And so that's really the essence of the foundation of what I call breakthrough leadership, and how you start to make breakthroughs more plannable.
What is it that you think has been the obstacle to people finding this in their life? Or the obstacle?
I think, yeah, there's several factors that go into it. I think that one is that there's a fascination, a passion to focus on the obstacle rather than the breakthrough. From having been experienced in my work, I end my programs, almost all of the 1900 programs, with people breaking through 1-inch thick boards karate style. It's metaphor of breaking through a fear, an obstacle or habit or doubt. And it's the most awesome thing. I mean, I've done it 1900 times. Can't wait to do it this Friday again. But the power of this is that the biggest single element in the breakthrough is the simplest little piece.
Yeah.
And that is, are you focusing on the board or beyond the board? And our culture loves the board. Media is rarely, how much good news do we hear on the media? What we hear is focusing on what's wrong, on what we don't want. And so it becomes conditioned as a part of the way that we move. So a lot of what we're doing, you do and I do, is to try to break that unhealthy conditioning and ask yourself, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on what you want to create, or are you focusing on the obstacle? So I think that's the biggest piece right there, is that we are drawn partly from when we're raised little kids. When little kids, the biggest word we hear in the first 5-7 years is no. And it's protection, and it's important.
Yeah.
But we need to start to focus on yes.
I was given a presentation this past weekend, and I was talking about purpose, and that sense of purpose was really tied to, so what are you going to do? What action are you going to take? If you have a purpose, what action you're going to take? And then as the conversation was going on, I realized what was being reflected back to me was, well, I have a purpose, but I don't know how to act on that purpose. And that breakthrough is there's a mental breakthrough there. I said, you're thinking too big. This is too big a thing. You're thinking that you got to go out and change the entire world. No, you just got to do one thing, one little small thing. Do that, and then do another one, and then do another one. And what you do is you get into a rhythm, into a flow, and then you find that you've changed your life, because now you're actually taking initiative to make a difference in the world. And I think that breakthrough is such a key thing, as you talk about.
Yeah, I think that one of the most profound things that ever popped into my head when I was speaking long ago is, I say it at every single event, is that we never break through alone. That whenever we break through in any way, we become a little more courageous. We learn something new. We try something that we've always wanted to try, but we're afraid to do. We're a little kinder. It doesn't stop with us. It starts with us.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you just said is make it too big. Sometimes we don't even start, but we missed 100% of the shots we never took. But you do that one thing, and here's the truth. That one thing is not one thing. Because when you're add a little kindness to a person, you take a little initiative, you're just a little kinder to a person who's down in that day. It doesn't stop there. They start to be a little kinder to somebody else. It starts to affect somebody else. My favorite movie of all time is It's a Wonderful Life, the Christmas movie, about the angel and about George Bailey, the guy who thought, I'm a failure. And what he didn't realize was the little things he did each day affected so much more than he really knew. And that's the truth for all of us, that we really have a wonderful life when inch by inch we recognize anything's a cinch.
Well, you've been talking about this for a long time. You've been writing about this. How many books have you written over the course of your life, your career?
I have my 16th book coming out in November 14th. It will be my 16th. So I've written 16 books, had a blast doing all of them. Some of them co-authored, but a lot of them are not. And it's just, I love it because writing is about taking things that you have inside of you, but have never connected, and having them come together.
So this one that's coming out in a month, I'm excited about because, well, I want you to tell the world what you're writing about and why, and then I'll say this is why I think it's really important. So tell us about the book.
The book is called Lessons from the Legends, and it's my very first book was called Beyond Success, and the foreword to that book was written by the man that I consider to have been the greatest coach of all time. His name was John Wooden. Ted Lasso fans, John Wooden's Pyramid of Success, right behind me right there, was up on the wall of his office. There was an episode about the pyramid. Coach Wooden was the most successful coach in history in his field, men's college basketball at UCLA. 10 national championships. Perspective, no other coach in men's history has won more than 5. Coach K at Duke won 5 in 42 years of coaching. Coach Wooden won 10 in 12 years. Of course, they were the last 12 years. And he would have been the first to tell you he didn't win any in the first 27 years that he coached. He used to say it's what you look after you know everything that makes the difference. So one of the legends in this book is John Wooden. And the other was someone, so I knew a lot about coaching. He was my friend. He passed away in 2010 at the age of 99 and a half. For those who don't care about sports, John was a person, better father, better husband, better human being than he was a coach. He treated people with dignity and respect. So he's one of the lessons from the legends, one of the legends who the lessons are about. The other was one I didn't know as much about. And so I got to study her. I got to learn everything. I got to find out everything I could about her. And her name was Pat Summitt. And Pat Summitt was the University of Tennessee women's basketball coach. And in many ways, she was to women's basketball what Coach Wooden was to men's. 16 Final Fours, 8 national championships. But really, she put women's college basketball on the map. And what drove me to write this book is 2 things. One, I feel that more than any time in my 69 years of living, we need to focus on character rather than reputation. Because character is who you are.
Yeah.
Reputation only what others think you are. And if you stay with that focus on character, it'll become your reputation, as it is with you, Ed. And I feel like we've become so caught up in focusing on what other people think and comparison, in learning and forgetting that we can disagree with being disagreeable. And when we do that, we have a chance to learn something. And both Coach Wooden and Coach Summitt just exemplified the power of character. They would do what was right, even if they knew it might not come out the way they hoped. That was more important to them. And that's what they taught. And they both consider themselves teachers more than coaches. That's the first reason, because I want to inject in a fun way the power of character and take these 2 examples that character works. But these are the 2 most successful people in history. So you can live that way. And guess what? You can be successful. The second reason why I loved writing this book was because I wanted to show that we can be very different and yet be connected. Because John Wooden and Pat Summitt were polar opposites in style. Coach Wooden, probably the toughest words he ever said was good grief. He was very, very much a gentleman. He was the antithesis of the throw the chair kind of guy. Never really had a harsh word to say to anyone. Mm-hmm. Coach Summitt could melt this screen with her stare. She was tough. She said things like, "Toughen up, Buttercup." And she was just intense. But their foundations were the same. Their principle. They both grew up on farms. They both had incredible work ethic. They both gave credit and took responsibility, and they both were remarkably humble. And if there were one third reason I wrote this book, is I want to help people understand that you are much more powerful when you are humble than when you are not. Because only those who are humble are lifelong learners. Yeah. We've got this misconstrued idea that being humble means you're not confident. Not true. You're really confident and really humble. Because being humble doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. And that's what they both did.
What I have found is that humility is a product of your values. And if you have no sense of what your values are, then you have a hard time being humble because you have no ground which to stand upon. And the way I characterize this, there's no ground for you to stand on where you can say no to the attractive thing that's being offered to you, but it violates the values that you hold. And that's, that's what I like about, people who talk about character. There's a lot of that online now, a lot of YouTube people talking about character, but it's actually how you exhibit character in your daily life, which is more important. And I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier, which is that it starts with our relationships with one another, how we connect with one another. And
absolutely. And there's a litmus test for that connection. And I think, and it's probably the most important principle that I teach, that if I had only 10 minutes with a group instead of a keynote or a half day, it would be these 10 minutes. And I think that relationship is built from a foundation of one thing: being fully present. When you're fully present with people, that means 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with that person where they are now. It's probably your greatest gift, Dad. You are fully present. That's why you're built to do these podcasts, because you're always looking to learn. And whenever we are fully present to another human being, that's when we establish trust. That's when we lay the foundation of a relationship, because only through our presence do we actually communicate at a heart level to that person that they are important. Because you can't fake being present.
That's true. That's true. And you mentioned Ted Lasso, this series, earlier, because he is a follower of Coach Wooden's pyramid. But if I love that show. I didn't watch it until the third season, and I was, and once I saw the third season, I went back and watched all three seasons binge, just a few days, because I said, this is a remarkable exhibit of the way we all should be, that of character, of putting relationships first, putting the betterment of the coach or the player ahead of the team. Winning or losing is not the point. It's being our very end. And I really like that. And in that episode in the first season where he's playing darts with the former owner of the team, and he's being very humble, and he's talking about being curious and not judgmental. And he says, I realized that, that people just didn't care about me. And he says, but I know how to play darts. Bang, 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 and he wins the match. And I just thought that's such a perfect picture of what we have been talking about, which is character, humility, but also excellence in the performance and the outcome of what we do.
Absolutely. And I think that I love that Ted Lasso show, because what it did was how many shows do you remember where the lead character is so humble and never blames anyone? When you are truly a person of character, you become a blame buster. And it's for a very simple reason, because blame has no productive capacity. Because blame, think about it in terms of time. Is blame about the past, the present, or the future? It's always about the past.
Yeah.
Where you cannot change it, where you cannot do anything. So a blame buster does not pretend that we don't mess up. Ted Lasso, would say, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to. But what they do is they take it out of the past and put it into the now and say, what can we learn from this? How can we get better? And when you stop blaming people in organizations, blame is the most insidious destroyer of teams. Mm-hmm. When you have an organization where there's a lot of blame, people feel like that old carnival game called whack-a-mole. Like if you stick your head out, you're going to get whacked. All right. But in an organization where there are blame busters, people will take healthy risks. They'll try new things, and understanding that the worst that could happen is it doesn't work, but we learned what didn't work. And that is one of the elements I loved about Ted Lasso. Never blamed. And watching the show, you knew there were places where he was mistreated, where there's a lot going on, but he always looked to say, what can I do? Again, controlling his own controllables to do the right thing as best he could. And also to come back and say, well, I wish I would have done that differently. I got to learn from that one.
Yeah. And even when he is struggling with his own life, he's still that way. And he's not deflecting his own troubles onto other people and blaming them for it. I mean, It's a very remarkable show, and I hope
Great character.
Yeah,
A great character for people to learn from. In every single show, there was at least one absolute pearl that he would come up with. You'd be laughing or, wondering and then he'd come out with something in this down home, Ted Lasso kind of a way. And you'd say, son of a gun, that is brilliant.
I teared up on just about every episode.
Me too. I cried open to supermarkets just like you. We'll meet you in the frozen food section.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Brian, tell people how they can find this book that you're publishing in a month. Is it going to be, where do they find it?
Well, it will be coming out on November 14th, which is pretty exciting to me because it's my wife's birthday. And you can get that book anywhere you buy books. You can get it from my website, which is just brianbiro.com. You can get it from, starting on the 14th, you can get it from Amazon. You can get it from Barnes & Noble. Anywhere you buy books, it'll be in bookstores. It'll be anywhere. And I really encourage people to buy it right away. It'd be a great stocking stuffer, incidentally, for Christmas. I figured it out. It fits in a stocking. It's not a huge book, but there's a huge amount of wonderful stories. To me, stories are the most powerful way that we can connect with people. You'd be fascinated by this. There was a study done in 2016 by Forbes that looked at stories versus information. And what they found is that if you want to communicate a lesson or an idea or a principle, when you do so in the form of a story, it's 22 times more powerful than just the facts, just the information. 22 times. That is massive.
Yeah.
And so I love to tell stories, and this book is filled with stories to bring alive Pat Summitt's Definite Dozen and John Wooden's Pyramid of Success.
Well, there are many people out there who are in our age bracket who remember Pat Summitt and John Wooden, who cheered them on, who were impacted by their character, impacted by their performance on the court, and I would suggest that they are the ones who need to buy this and give them to their grandchildren. Pass it on, and then talk about what's in the book. Talk about what's in the book.
Yep.
I know it's going to be
kind of fun. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I'll just say I know it's going to be a great book, and people are going to love it. And I'd love to see you come out of the gate really with a big sale on the day that.
Well, thank you so much, and it will appeal to those grandchildren because it has stories about Reese Witherspoon, Michael Phelps, has stories about LeBron James, has stories about people who are presently exhibiting the very principles that these folks taught. That's the way I wanted to bring it alive, was to bring it alive with current stories about people that are in the news or in the world right now trying to make a difference. And you'll find that every one of the foundational principles were so connected. They might have used different terminologies, John Wooden, Pat Summitt, but they were basically the same at their core. And they work. That's what they work in your family. They work in your health. They work in your career. They work in your heart. And that's what matters is right now. Let's get back to understanding character is where it's at.
Well, that's a good place to stop, Brian. Thank you for coming on. It's great, always great to see you. I'm always encouraged by what you have to say, and I look up to you as one of the giants in the world of public speaking and motivation. And I know you've touched a lot of people over your many years of work, and I thank you for that. And it's an honor to have you on the show.
It's an honor and privilege to be with you. You have a massive heart and a true love of making a difference. And I think you're absolutely a perfect person to be doing these shows. So joy to you, and joy to everyone that matters to you. And thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you everyone for watching. You can subscribe and hit the like button if you will, and leave a comment if you'd like. And we'll put the way to find the book, maybe all the books that Brian has written. Maybe you can get a whole stack of them, and we'll let you find that, be able to find the book when it comes out. And I think I may have to work on the now that I'm thinking, I may rework my schedule. I have you scheduled for the 20th of November, but I think I'm gonna reschedule you and bring you out earlier so that we can promote the sale of the book. So maybe
that would be phenomenal. That would be phenomenal. Thank you.
I think we're gonna have this come out on the 13th. So everyone, if you're listening, take some initiative. Go make a difference. Buy a couple of books and give them to the people that you think you want to say thank you for being a person of character in my life. I think that's the idea, that you are going to keep giving it on, passing it on. And thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.